So she raised my rate. Like, she pushed through that ceiling that I had, and she was just like, no, that's too low. You gotta go higher.
Wake up, wake up, wake up. If you can see it, you can be it. Do you believe it?
Hey guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm gonna do something a little different. I'm gonna tell you a story. I don't know why I said story, so weird. We're off to a great start. I'm gonna tell you a story about something I manifested years ago. I don't think I've ever talked about this. I don't usually like to talk about, well, I shouldn't say I don't like to. I do love talking about manifestation, but I don't feel so comfortable talking about it all the time, especially not in public, just because I don't always know where people are at with their journey. And I don't want to like woo-woo scare them away. But today I'm gonna tell a story about how I manifested my very first $10,000 gig. Yeah, it was super crazy at the time because of the way it happened. So I feel like the thing about manifestation that I've noticed is not the thing that you get that is the most amazing. It could be anything, right? It's how things happen. They call it the bridge of incidents in Neville Goddard terms. There's a teacher who kind of was around in the early like 1920 to 1960 era. I love the things that he talked about, but he had something called the bridge of incidents. That's really the most fun part of all this. So I try not to focus on the thing itself, because if we wanted the thing itself, we would just be born with everything and then we'd just die and life would be so boring. Without further ado, let me just tell the story. So this happened in 2022, and that was the year that I really got pretty heavy on the manifestation practices, as in like journaling a lot and just being more mindful of my thoughts, and really just like the fact that I became aware that my thoughts were creating the things happening in my life. That alone just brought a lot more things into my life. At the beginning of 2022, one of my friends had signed me up for one of those kind of New Year classes that gives you kind of like a boost going into the new year, and it was so great. So it made me really excited. I set all these goals, and I had just moved into a new apartment at the time, which had a pretty high rent for me at the time. I was only able to qualify because the last 3 months, they ask you for the last 3 months of your paychecks. They happen to be great months. I've lived the gig life, so it fluctuates. But because they happen to be great months, I had qualified at the time, but I wasn't so sure I would qualify for the whole moving forward every month. Anyway, this is the preface for why I wanted to manifest higher paying gigs at the time. So in March of 2022, I got invited to my longtime childhood friend's wedding in Bali. For years, I had been trying to manifest a trip to Bali. I even had it as my background on my computer. So that was just like a okay moment. But also, I immediately thought, how am I going to pay for this? So that was one of the reasons I wanted to manifest a lump sum. The invitation came in March and the wedding was in July. So there wasn't a lot of time to kind of prep this trip. And also, I also want to add that I had not paid my rent yet I think it was in April. I had not paid my rent yet for pay rent at the first of the month. Okay, so I had not paid my rent yet for the last month in April. And then May was due. It was due on the 1st, but we had a grace period till the 5th. So when I logged into my management website, it showed 2 months rent due, which was like $5,000 plus some other utilities. Or I don't think we had utilities. It's been a while.
Yeah, I think it was at least like $5,000. So it was like a big lump sum.
Which was stressing me. So that was kind of coming out of the pandemic. So there was a big boom with events and DJing and just people being outside in general. So I thought maybe I could try to manifest $10,000. I just liked the sound of that number. It seemed like a very round number. But at the time, I had never DJ'd any gig, one gig for probably more than 2,000, maybe 3,000, but if anything, that would have been the cap. But that was would have been a really hard 3,000, like including equipment and heavy labor and everything. So it seemed kind of like a reach out of my belief, but I knew that it was doable because I had seen people around me making a lot of money from DJing. Anyway, so I just set this goal. I didn't really think too hard about how it was going to come about. I just set this goal, and I had written a check to myself that said DJ services rendered, and wrote $10,000. And I tried to find the check for this video, but weirdly I couldn't find it anywhere. Up until this year, maybe last year, end of last year, I specifically remember it was still in my wallet. I had kept it there, but I must have tossed it when I realized that years later that this was fulfilled. I don't know why I would have done that, but I can't find it anymore, so I'm so sorry. But you just have to believe me. I wrote this check to myself for DJ services rendered and wrote $10,000. I don't remember exactly when I did it, but I do remember that I did it in that new apartment. So it had to be sometime in 2022 because that's when I moved into that apartment. So I forgot about it. I just in the back of my mind knew that I wanted that. Now fast forward to May 2022, I get this email from my DJ agent asking about doing an event that's a couple days for a luxury auto event that would be something like 9 to 11 hours a day for over the weekend. So I thought, wow, this is a lot of work, but maybe this could be how I could make a good sum of money. And so I gave her my quote at the time based on my level of belief of what I thought I could push for. And funny enough, she actually came back and said, your rate is lower than everybody else, so I'm just gonna submit you at the higher rate so that all the girls can match, so it's just even and the client won't have to be deciding based on the rate. So she raised my rate, like she pushed through that ceiling that I had for myself, and she was just like, no, that's too low, you gotta go higher. So long story short, I got the gig, and it ended up being 3 days at 8 hours each of DJing, and I didn't have to bring any equipment. In my mind at the time, I thought if I wanted to make $10,000, I would for sure have to bring equipment and kind of use the equipment costs to pay for that. I didn't believe that I could just make that on the basis of my time, me showing up. But I didn't have to bring any equipment. It was 3 days straight. And it was so cool. It was for, I guess I can say it because I already did it years ago, but it was for Ferrari. They had this luxury test drive, and they had a lot of their top clients that have previously purchased Ferraris come and just test drive a new car that wasn't on the market yet. So it was just such a great time. And after that, I realized that you should never doubt God, because you say you want something. Like I said, I wanted $10,000 from a gig, and I still couldn't believe, like doing the math, I was like, what's the most I could charge for? Okay, then I'm gonna have to bring equipment and all this stuff, and that's the only way I could do it. But God was like, no, you said it, it's done. And he was like, okay, we're gonna raise your rate, you don't have to bring equipment, this is you. Oh, and another thing that happened on the event was that they had rented out this mansion in Beverly Hills that was like in between sales. So I think it was an empty mansion. Sometimes they do that. They'll use them for private events. The realtors will have some deals. So they'll be fully like decked out so that the realtors can show them, but there's no one living in there. So there were some power issues. And like I mentioned before, I didn't have to bring my own gear. Usually they do a whole setup with CDJs, just bring my laptop or USB plug-in and play. But because there were power issues, and CDJs are pretty power heavy, like there's 2 decks and the mixer, they all take power. So it turned out that they ended up, I had brought a backup controller that didn't need, it was USB powered, just like a really light controller. I ended up just whipping that out and playing on that. And because of that, I got an extra little bump for an equipment fee. It wasn't that much, it was just for the controller. But that little bit also helped me get to my goal of $10,000. So all of the things conspired for my request, my desire that I had just planted that seed saying, I want to do a gig for $10,000. And everything conspired together for that to happen. So this was just a really cool story that I always try to go back to when I'm feeling doubtful again, because there's still times where I just go through these moments and I have to remind myself of the amazing ways that God will pour into you if you just trust Him. Also, at the time, I had owed a lot of money in credit card debt. I still do. I'm working on that. We can talk about that in another video. But that was left over from the pandemic because I just pretty much used credit cards to save me from hunger. I basically lived off of credit cards during the pandemic when I had no income. So I had racked up quite a bit of debt. And when I got that gig, the $10,000, that month and the month after were really big months for me. They were my highest months. I think I made 20,000 or something like that. I was like really zoned in for some reason during that period. And so I just remember like paying off my credit cards. It was like such a relief feeling to just like, I think one of them was like 5,000. I just like, it almost like made my heart drop to do it because it's like a lot of money at once to just fork over. But obviously I had spent that money. So it's like, I had to give it back. So I remember doing that, like typing the amount and doing it and seeing it reset to zero. And that felt so good. And I remember that was right before my trip to Bali. So when I went to Bali, I really just felt like I could relax and breathe and just enjoy my time there. So everything just came together full circle at that time. Now I do want to add something because I think a lot of times we hear these stories and they're so inspirational, and I do want to inspire people if this helps in any way. But at the same time, I want to make it known that it's not perfect either, because like I said, I still do have debt. Sometimes there's mindset things that are still there underneath it. So you can manifest the big sum of money or whatever the amount you need for the moment. But if you don't do the work underneath it, that takes some time. So I've been working on that too. And just trying to remind myself, like, these things, they're there for you whenever you're ready. Basically, God is like, hey, I've got blessings for you. You just need to be ready, get ready. And if you're not ready, He's like, well, okay, maybe tomorrow. I'll check back with you tomorrow. So that's what I'm currently working on, is keeping that consistency with my faith and with my, I guess, my mindset and my belief in abundance, if that makes sense. So I hope this helps you guys. If you guys have any stories like that as well, you can leave it in the comments. I love hearing about people's stories and just their experiences. Or if you have any questions, I'm by no means an expert. I'm not a guru, but you can always ask me if you have questions about my experience. Well, if you like this and you'd like to hear more, because I have so many crazy stories like this, let me know so I'll know whether I should make more of these story times. All right, bye-bye now.